All right. It's Wednesday night. It's 8 o'clock. And we are live for the Panther-Lair Show. I put out promo tweets and promo message board posts and things like that to let everybody know, like, hey, we got a live show. Tune in at 8 o'clock. We'll talk about Pitt sports, join the conversation and everything like that. And I try to lay out some of the topics that we'll have to talk about. And there's like a lot of topics. I thought Jim and I would spend this whole hour talking about whether or not to take the over-under on 5.5 wins for Pitt, because that's what I talked about on the morning Pitt this morning. And so I thought that would be the extent of our, the extent of our conversation. And I'd be like, wow, that's going to be, there's not going to be a whole lot to, can we fill a whole hour with that kind of talk? But then, you know what? There's a lot to talk about. Brand new hoops target on the board. Very intriguing guy visiting Pitt right now. Bosnian, a 6'7" Bosnian who can shoot 40% from three. Yeah. Brand new football commitment on the transfer side. 2 commitments on the high school side. Plus those over-under win totals and settlements in major NCAA class action lawsuits. I mean, like, I almost wonder if we'll have enough time in an hour. Or if an hour will be enough time to talk about all these topics. I'm sure they will be. But if you want to get into the conversation, the time to do it is now. Put your comments and your questions in the chat screen right over there. We'll read as many as we can throughout the hour. Any of those topics or anything else you have in mind is there for you to discuss. But there's a lot going on, a lot more than I would have expected on the Wednesday in the middle of May. Anthony Tennyson and Scott Eisenberg are already in with comments. You guys want to join them? Put your comments and your questions there. While you're at it, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, to get all of our Pitt video content. The morning Pitt videos every day of the week. These weekly live shows every Wednesday night. It's always fun. 8 o'clock, sometimes 8:30, usually 8 o'clock. Try to get it at 8 o'clock so we can get to bed at a reasonable hour. With Jim Hammett and me, we'll bring Jim in a second. And anything else we do right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You don't want to miss any of it. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm sure you can find that subscribe button. It's not hard. It's right there. YouTube makes it easy for you. Let's bring in Jim, see what he's up to tonight. There's the button. There we go, Jim. It's nice and sunny behind you. I guess you often have those blinds closed, Jim, but now it really looks like daytime out there. Like it's, I know it's getting later in, but I guess they don't have any good windows here in the Panther-Lair.com studios, but I like that. I like the sunshine over your shoulder. It looks nice. How's everything in Johnstown?
Everything's going okay. Yeah, it's staying lighter. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Good times.
I think we have a lot to talk about, so we don't really have to talk about the Johnstown weather. So,
well, it's always. I just want to make sure there's not going to be a flood or anything like that. Or,
that's always
it seems like you got a good signal. Your connection seems solid, so we always like that. Ron Carnivale likes your Green Sky Bluegrass shirt. He's picking up on that there. So, yeah, shout out to Green Sky. Is Green Sky playing the Flood City Music Fest this year, Jim?
No, not this year. I think they're working on it, but
have they played there before?
They've played in Johnstown before for something. I might go check them out down at Delfest in a couple weeks.
I could have a long conversation about that. That would be a lot of fun. Del McCurry's a good time. Did you see? I was going to say, did you see they lost the music festival that was happening in Pittsburgh? It's kind of.
I did. I didn't really know many bands other than the Killers and Wiz Khalifa. So
right. Well, yeah, it was less about, oh man, I'm bummed out that I can't go to that, and more that I'm bummed out. I was hoping that would be like, okay, this happens, and then we can get more things like that. Like, so that one didn't necessarily appeal to me on a music sense, but or like on a music in terms of taste, but I was hoping it would lead to more of those kinds of things, and maybe Hazelwood Green could become some kind of music venue for festivals. But unfortunately, I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if it was low ticket sales or what it was. We're getting sidetracked here. Ron Carnivale says that Green Sky has played at the Flood City Music Fest. So you did you just say that, or you said you weren't sure?
I said they played in Johnstown, but not in the festival itself.
Oh, okay. Good. And Benjamin Glazer wants to talk about Delfest. I could talk for a while about seeing Del McCurry last year at this small little venue in Charleston, South Carolina. It was awesome. It was so much fun. I would love to go down to that. It actually looks like it would be a really good time. I think that's like next weekend, you said?
Last year. It is a good time.
Seems like it would be. All right. Well, there's some comments in here, and I think we have to start by talking about the stuff that came out today. And someone here already has commented. Nuclear Nadal says, I'm from Bosnia. Okay, I trust him because he says that a city is 50 kilometers from him, and no one would pretend to use the metric system unless it was sort of native to them. So Pitt in on a Bosnian wing, a 6'7" Bosnian wing named Amsel Delich?
Delich?
No, it wouldn't be Delich. Delalich. Delachik. No, it wouldn't be Delachik because you need a second L in there. It's Delalic. And when you look on some of the on like Bosnian website or Bosnian basketball website, there's some sort of mark over the C. So I think it does end in a ch type of sound, right? So I don't know if Nuclear Nadal,
we're gonna need like
if they're from Bosnia, right? If you can give us a phonetic pronunciation of Delich. I don't know. Here's what I can pronounce. I can pronounce 6'7" wing who averages 14-5 and shoots 41.5% from three, and not just because he made like 4 out of 9 or something. He's second on the team in made 3-pointers. He's like 56 out of 100 and whatever it is that works out to that percent. Like a legit 3-point shooter as a 6'7", 6'8" wing. He's 20 years old and he's visiting Pitt right now. I mean, this is huge. Oh, here we got a phonetic pronunciation. What do you make of that? Delich?
Delich.
But did he forget the other L in there though? Delich. See, I got the C part. I got that's but I don't know the first part. Like Delich. Okay. Or is that just like a very Western Pennsylvania way of saying it, like Delalos? You know what I mean? Like we're just that's the yeah. Anyway. We can pronounce all the stats and we can talk about what he's able to do. Scott Eisenberg says his passing ability really popped on his highlight video. Also says, I don't think I've ever wanted Capel to land a player more than I want him to land Delich right now. Do we know if he's being recruited by any other schools? I don't know that. I don't know what other schools he's looking at. I don't really know his situation all that well. All I know is he's been playing. He's from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's playing basketball. He's 20 years old and he's visiting Pitt for now, I think through Friday. So, I mean, like this is a huge addition. I mean, if they're able to land him, people are saying, Jim, that quote, he'd be one of their best players right away, which is quite an extreme comment. Don't you think? For people to say if he walked onto the team, he would be one of their best players. Is that what you believe, Jim? Do you think this guy would be one of Pitt's best players from day one?
I think he fits a lot of, what they're trying to do with that position, that stretch 4 position, because I watched a little bit of the highlights and I know you always wonder, like, what's the competition like? Who's he playing? He's going to be a freshman. So whatever he was playing better than any other high school prospect in the country. Like Brandon Cummings was playing Mars a couple of weeks ago. This dude's playing professionals. So, I mean, like that's what we're talking about here. So, I mean, I think his game would translate right away because he might even be 21 by the time he is a college freshman. So you have a 21-year-old college freshman playing against professionals right now. I mean, the leading scorer on his team, kind of a blast from the past, is Jared West.
Right.
He was a guy Pitt recruited, as a transfer portal guy out of Marshall, ended up at Louisville. But that just kind of paints the picture of, he's playing guys like that. He's playing guys like Nelly Cummings and a lot of good quality college basketball players. He's putting up numbers. I mean, he's averaging 14 a game. He can make threes, and as Scott mentioned, he could really pass. So I mean, if you're watching the NBA playoffs right now, I mean, you're seeing a little bit of a European takeover. And he has. I'm not saying he's as good as those guys, but he has those kind of elements to his game.
Yeah, I mean, like level of competition notwithstanding, the way he can catch the ball and shoot, like I feel like that translates. You know what I mean? I feel like shooting can like if you are a guy who can just drain shots, I think that kind of thing can translate. And I think you should be able to do it sort of not regardless of level of competition, but he's not just, he's not averaging 15 rebounds per game playing against a bunch of guys who are 5'8". He's legitimately shooting 41.5% from three on a high volume of shots. And you know that thing about somebody saying he'd be one of their best players right away. That was you.
I know.
That, right? Okay, good. I was like, he's not really backing up that statement or acknowledging that it was him. So I wanted to. No, you went out. You went out strong on it. And I mean, I think like what's not to like as like scholarship number 12, a guy who could potentially be a starter, and if not, and if he doesn't start, he's still probably going to play 20 minutes per game. Even if he gives you like Guillermo Diaz-Graham production last year, you know what I mean, or like Mo Gee production or Greg Elliott production. Like, why couldn't he average 9-10 points per game at a minimum? And that's, if the only thing in his game that translates is the 3-point shooting, I think he still gets you 9 or 10 points per game. If the rest of his game, the handle, the passing, and all those things translate, shoot. I mean, this is a guy who could legitimately play either of those two wing spots, the 3 or the 4, or could play the 2. Yeah, I don't think it would be crazy at all. Somebody in that, there's a pretty good thread about him so far on the message boards, and somebody said he's like a point forward. I mean, what an addition. As we've been talking about what they can get or who they could add to be at the 4 or be at the 3 or whatever. I mean, this surpasses anything I think we've like on potential, surpasses just about anything else we've looked at Pitt, possibly adding. I mean, I guess the comparison is going to be Adou Thiero, right? And there was some of that comparison made in that thread, but I think you made a point out, or you made the point of like, he probably fits what they need even better than Thiero does.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Because I mean, you look at Thiero, and I think they were selling him on like because he was a high school point guard, and he, all he did at Kentucky was just be a power forward, and that's probably always going to be at Arkansas. But I think Pitt was going to allow him to have the ball in his hands, facilitate a little bit more. But that was going to be something he had to add to his game. That's something he hasn't really done at the college level. I mean, I think whenever you talk about Amsel, I guess I'm going to do that for now. But I just think he has all those elements to his game already. He's older. He's experienced. He's played, guys older than him. He's used to that. So I think he already has those elements of being that point forward, being a stretch shooter, and also, being tall. I mean, he's 6'8". I think he's going to, add some length to the lineup too. So, I mean, he's not a perfect trade-off for Blake Hinson here, but I mean, it's pretty ideal. And truthfully, I like him a lot better than some of the transfer portal guys they were looking at just beyond Thiero. I mean, just some of the names that were popping up. He seems better. I mean, he seems like he fits, and that's why there's kind of this great mystery around him, because it's like he almost seems too good to be true. Like there has to be other schools. It's not like Pitt just found this Bosnian dude and they're going to bring him in. Like somebody else knows about him too. I'm guessing there'll be other schools involved, and we'll learn more. But I mean, on the surface, just after you reported it a couple hours ago, I mean, it all looks really good.
Yeah, and if there weren't schools on him prior, I think Tim O'Toole was kind of leading the charge here, and I think O'Toole can kind of find things. I think O'Toole found the Diaz-Graham twins, right? I mean, they were in America.
So.
They were at like IMG, right? So not quite the same as going to to Bosnia to find a player, or Bosnia and Herzegovina, excuse me. But if there weren't schools on him before, I think once the word of this visit's getting out, you might start. You know what I mean? Like other schools will take a look and be like, wait, hold on a second. But I don't know how it would work with a guy coming from overseas. I mean, the NIL factor maybe is a little bit less, the NIL component is maybe a little bit less of a factor. There's still things that can be done. But I don't know. I'm sort of thinking, and this is just my guess. This isn't based on any sources or anything like that. So he's visiting today, I think through Friday. I think it's like a full blown official visit. And then I think they might just wrap it up. You know what I mean? Like it sort of seems like that kind of thing where, you make all the necessary connections and relationships, you get him on campus for a visit, and then by the end he's done and he's ready to move in. Who knows? Like next month, you know what I mean? Or a couple of weeks. I mean, there are guys moving in right now. There's always that sort of early summer semester, that first semester of the summer that I think starts in May. Mm-hmm. So who knows? I mean, this could happen sort of rather quickly. It kind of came out of nowhere rather quickly, and it could sort of come together rather quickly. And then, I mean, this roster is pretty set, right? I don't think there's a need. Our guy Matt keeps talking about just sort of adding another body, and they could do that, or maybe a random high school or something like that. But I mean, they're pretty well set with like 12 guys. I mean, that's pretty strong spot to be in, don't you think?
Yeah, and to speak to your point about wrapping things up quickly is, just through the years, interviewing different prospects, and sometimes guys are international. It's like they're not as like enamored with the blue blood thing as an American kid would be. Like he wouldn't know that, like, oh, Pitt's in the ACC, that's a good school. He wouldn't know, like, if North Carolina and Duke came calling, like that wouldn't like immediately jump to his head. He's just, okay, I'm looking for a big time college basketball place. Pitt looks pretty good. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it'll wrap up quickly, but I think it could. I mean, I think they did some legwork here, and it didn't all just happen today. I think that this has kind of been in the works for a couple weeks. So, but with the roster, I think they would be done. I think they're looking just for that one extra piece. They're looking for that stretch forward to kind of, just bring a little more lineup versatility. And they can play big with Guillermo at the 4. They could play with him at the 4. They could play with Zach Austin. They can do so many different things now with a lineup and just configuring things. So I think they'd be in a great position. And I don't know if they would just add that 13th guy just to add. I mean, I think it would have to be someone they think could help, or, kind of a late ad high school prospect flying under the radar, someone like that.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, they could legitimately at points go with a lineup that has like Jalen Lowe point guard, and then this kid at the 2 as a 6'8" guy, Jorge at the 3, like a 6'11" guy, Guillermo at the 4, and then Cam Corrin, the short guy at only 6'10", playing the. I mean, like that has to be like last year. You kept making the point about one of the biggest lineups Pitt has had, right? I mean, like that could legitimately be one of the tallest lineups, and like a legitimate lineup of like a valid lineup that you might actually consider using. That's gonna be one of the tallest lineups. Like Florida State would look at that lineup and be like, "Damn, that's some tall guys." I mean, like that would be, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't know how much you want to play both Diaz Graham twins, and there'd be questions about defense and stuff like that. But I mean, you could legitimately have that. So I mean, if they get this kid, are you penciling him in as a starter, like a starter at the 4, or what do you see? How do you see the lineup looking if they were to get him?
I mean, that would make the most sense to me, because I think it kind of balances, everything that they're trying to do, and it kind of fits, what they've had success with the past 2 seasons is having that thread on the outside at the 4. So I don't know if I'd pencil him in as a starter, but I mean, like he's gonna be one of their, main 8 players. I think last week we talked about an 8-man rotation. I don't know who drops out of it, but he would definitely drop into it. So,
well, Tommy Graham says that's a slow lineup if they were to go with Lowe. How are we saying it? Delich, Jorge Guillermo, and I mean Jorge Guillermo can run the court. Yeah, you're not going to get out in transition very much, but you're also going to get every rebound. So if they just grab every rebound and Jalen runs down the court and they just throw it ahead to him, they should be fine. But let's see. Grant Sakuda says international players can't make NIL money. That has to benefit Pitt, right? Yeah, I mean there are ways around that. You can put up billboards in their home country or something like that. I mean, like, some Canadian players have gotten NIL money. I mean, the Twins got something, right? There was a way for them to get something. So there are ways to do it, but I don't know. I tend to think that, situation like this, you're the school that shows interest. You're the school that builds the relationships. You end up, usually being able to benefit from it. So yeah, interesting development. I gotta say, I did not have Pitt hosting a Bosnian 6'7" 3-point shooting wing on my bingo card for today. I don't know about you. Did you like when you were thinking about what they might get for one of these spots? You're probably figuring like probably a 4 from a mid-major or a low major. Is that?
That's kind of what somebody that was in the transfer portal, had been in for a while, and just a name we haven't uncovered yet, but somebody in that kind of space. I mean, I don't have an exact comparison, but it wasn't this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it didn't have the upside as this either.
Yeah, it would be like Zach Austin. You know what I mean? Someone sort of on that caliber. I know they got him earlier in the portal, but like a guy from Stony Brook or somewhere like that is what I thought. It was this good. He was definitely not on our radar though. I would say that. Still don't even know how to pronounce his name. So that's interesting. If anybody else wants to talk about that, you can jump in with the comments and questions. I want to bring this up because I talked a lot on the Morning Pit today about over-unders for the football team this season. And so I figured we'd touch on it. The over-under, Brett McMurphy with his Action News Network or whatever it's called, tweeted out 5.5 for Pitt, near the bottom of the ACC, as you might imagine. And I talked a lot about that on the Morning Pit today of whether they would go over or under 5.5. And Anthony Tennyson says, I'm saying the football team will win 6 to 8 games in having a successful season. You taking over or under 5.5 there, Jim?
I think I'm going over. Maybe not significantly over, but I think they're going to level themselves off from that, three win season. I think they're going to bounce back a little bit. And I mean, looking at the schedule, I mean, just to, it's nothing that scares you. I mean, it's Clemson's good, and you're having a lot of ACC teams that Pitt should be in the same space in. Like, they are similar programs, and one thing breaks this way, and that's the difference between being 3-9 and 6-6. And I mean, there's not a lot of difference in those teams, and they all kind of recruit similarly. So I think just schedule wise, I think it sets up well for them. I don't think they have any crazy road trips this year. I mean, they're playing Boston College after Thanksgiving. They have to go to SMU. I mean, it's nothing crazy. I mean, it always comes back to the quarterback play. And yeah, I think if they just get decent quarterback play, they'll win a couple more games. And I think that's what they're going to get from Nate Yarnell.
I think going to SMU is tough. I think going to Carolina is tough. They have questions about their quarterback situation, but Pitt has never won at Carolina since joining the ACC. For whatever reason, and I think there are a variety of reasons why that's the case, but they've never done it. So I think that's tough as well.
What was the worst loss at Carolina? Was it that 16 one?
18 was pretty bad too. I think they had a lead in 2018, and they ended up like blowing it and losing like 38-35 or something. They had a lead in 2014 actually, and I feel like Todd Thomas whiffed on a sack or something like that. They've had leads actually. I mean, it would be interesting to look. I mean, I think like
the series is very close. Like wherever the game's played, it's always like a touchdown or less game.
Yeah, and just weird things happen down there. I want to see that 14 game because I feel like they've had a lead in the fourth quarter, like in 2014, 2016, and 2018, and they weren't able to hold on. 22, were they up at halftime in 2022?
Yeah,
I think they might have been. Yeah,
they were, and Cansey got ejected, and
that's right.
Once he got out, the game completely changed.
All right, yeah. Pitt led in the fourth quarter in 2014 for about 57 seconds, but they were up 28-19 in the third quarter. We know what they had in the 2016 game. That was a disaster, which it gets blamed largely on the defense, and rightfully so. But the offense couldn't sustain any possessions in the fourth quarter. That was a big problem too. For as much as we talk up Matt Canada and how good that offense was, they couldn't sustain any kind of possession in the fourth quarter. 2018 they were up 28-21 heading into the fourth quarter until about 7 minutes to go when Carolina scored on a couple of possessions. So anyway, that's just a tough place to play. You get weird calls there. I don't know about that situation. I think Louisville is a tough game. Syracuse really hinges on Kyle McCord. Like if Kyle McCord is good, Syracuse could be a bit of. I don't think they're going to be great, but they could be a problem for Pitt if Kyle McCord plays well. Virginia, I think, is probably still going to be kind of bad. I think Boston College is going to be bad. Louisville, I think, is going to be good. Syracuse, we'll see. Clemson kind of depends on that quarterback. He was like dead last in the ACC in yards per attempt last year. So they need to figure that out. But what are the wins, though? Like, get me over 5.5 wins. Kent State and Youngstown State, I'm going to assume those two. Where do you get your other 4? Where are you pulling those from?
I think they'll be Cal. I think they'll be Virginia. I think they'll split with Cincinnati, West Virginia, and Boston College.
Okay. All right. I'll buy that. Yeah, because I had Kent State, Youngstown State, Virginia, Boston College, Cal, probably Syracuse, depending on McCord. And then I wasn't sure what to do with Cincinnati and West Virginia. I don't really know what to expect. Like these other teams, I can at least look and get a sense of who they are. I don't know what to think out of Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati stunk last year. Yeah. We only saw one game, but they were fine that game. It looked like they were going to be good, but they were terrible, the rest of the season. Did they win another game after the Pitt game? Maybe one. like near the end.
Also 3-9 team too.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And I think they lost like 7 in a row or something like that. And I don't know what West Virginia is going to be. Do you have any read on that team at all?
No, I don't know if that's like your standard, like throw the record books out the window. It's the backyard brawl. But I mean, I think there is a little bit of element to that. I mean, I think Pitt was better 2 years ago and West Virginia gave them a game. I think both teams kind of stunk last year. And I think they both had like 211 yards exactly in the game. Like they were that even. So I don't know. I'm expecting another close game there.
Yeah. I was looking at times Pitt has, like the over has hit on Pitt's win totals under Narduzzi. 9 seasons, the over has hit 5 out of 9 times. And they pushed once. In 2020, the over-under was 6 wins. They won 6. So it's good that the over has hit all those times, except 4 out of the 5 were in Narduzzi's first 5 seasons. And the under has hit the last 2 years. Obviously, last year, the over-under was 7. They only won 3. The year before that, 8.5, and they won 8 regular season. A little bit of a trend there, but more often than not, Narduzzi is outperformed. I kind of agree with you. I think we both said it a lot of times, like just average quarterback play should be enough to get the 6 wins. I mean, like average quarterback play would have gotten them into bowl eligibility last year. And I think average quarterback play gets them into bowl eligibility this year. How confident are you, though, about average quarterback play?
I don't know. I mean, I thought at the end of the season he did look pretty good. I thought he kind of carried that over in the offseason. I thought he carried himself well around the team. I mean, I think he looked like, all right, it's my time. And I think he was kind of embracing that whole thing. But it's hard to gauge with a brand new offense. I mean, you don't know how all these parts are going to work together and, you know, how the schemes are going to match up. But I think at bare minimum, I think what he was able to do, you know, in that Boston College win, and he had a couple good throws and some good drives against Duke. I mean, I think that's sustainable. I don't think he was, you know, punching above his weight. And I mean, could they stand for him to be a lot better? Of course. I mean, like great quarterback play would be better than just okay quarterback play. But I mean, I think he can provide that. I mean, I think he's a veteran. He's a pretty smart guy. I mean, they always said he was, you know, one of the most prepared. It just, you know, Narduzzi would say, well, the last coordinator never gave him a chance. So, you know, yeah, he always had those shots this offseason. But I don't know. I think Nate's going to be solid enough.
Well, like you said, too, we don't know what the offense is actually like. I believe in Nate Yarnell more than I believe in the offense itself, just because I've seen Nate Yarnell and I haven't seen the offense, right? Like there remains the possibility, however small or large it may be, that this offense completely falls flat on his face, right? It like just blows up and doesn't work and they average 19 points per game or something like that. I mean, it could very well be like Mark Whipple's first year. Ideally not. Although even in Mark Whipple's first year, they won 8 games. You know, like that stands as a testament. Like that was an historically bad offense on par in some regards with the offense that we saw this year. I mean, it really was. Now, it just so happened that they had a quarterback who wasn't a complete and utter disaster. And they had a really, really good defense that was able to win games themselves sometimes. And that team ended up winning it. Like, I don't think anybody would make a case that 2019 Pitt team was good. Right. I think they were average at best. I mean, they trailed Eastern Michigan until the final 48 seconds or something like that. I mean, they were going to lose that game in the bowl game. You know, after losing, there's a mutual friend of ours who doesn't like, but often points out those occasions when Pitt loses to teams that later fire their coaches. And I think that was the case, right, with Boston College. They fired Sergeant Slaughter, right? And did Miami fire its coach that year too?
Probably.
They did. Who was Miami's coach in 2019? Was that? Thank you. I hear you tapping. I appreciate you looking it up.
I don't remember, but yeah, I mean, I definitely remember.
I thought you were looking it up. What are you doing? Come on.
I am looking it up.
Well, why don't you have it yet?
Because I have to figure out who the head coach was a couple of years ago.
It's hard.
Mark Richt?
Manny Diaz. Come on. It was his first year. Okay, so he didn't get fired.
Yeah, it was his first year.
All right, because I don't think they fired him after 1 year, right? So because Mark Richt, coached one more year after he lost to Pitt. Manny Diaz was at Miami for 3 years, and then they hired Mario. But anyway, yeah, Boston College fired their head coach after getting to bowl eligibility. That's what it was. Miami and Boston College both reached bowl eligibility just barely because they each won 6 games in the regular season. And I would contend that Pitt had a whole lot to do with those teams getting to bowl eligibility, like Boston College in the season finale and Miami winning literally a 16-12 game. If you lose a game 16-12, your offense is god awful bad, and Pitt's offense was god awful bad. So, but even then, they were able to get to a bowl. They were able to win 7 games in the regular season. They were able to win an 8th game. Just as evidence of how not that difficult it is, how you have to be historically bad to blow it as badly as Pitt did last year. So even if this offense falls completely on its face, which is there's a non-zero chance of that happening, even if this defense is porous, they still should win 6 or 7 games. So are you telling people, Jim, to bet the over? Is that what we're concluding here?
Yes. I think they can win 6 games.
Okay. 6
games. Take it to Vegas right now. Go to the Rivers Casino. Do what you need to do. Pull up FanDuel.
Bet it on the Action Sports News Network. Every time I see that Brett McMurphy writes for, I think it's Action Network or something, I just think of Ron Burgundy and the Action News Network or Action Sports.
Who else works there? Does Darren Rovell work there too?
I don't know.
Is it like a 2-man operation? I don't know.
It
sounds made up, but I know Brett McMurphy's been around forever. So
the only thing I ever see that ever reminds me that Action Sports News Network is a thing is when Brett McMurphy tweets things. And I can't tell you anything else that has to do with that outlet. I couldn't tell you what that outlet is. I don't even know if they have a website. They might just have Twitter accounts or one Twitter account, and it's Brett McMurphy. He used to cover USF. Did you know that? That's where he came from?
No.
Yeah, that was his origin. He was a USF beat writer for the St. Petersburg Times or something like that. And I think he sort of rose to glory breaking stories on the Big East because he had a lot of Big East contacts, and then it just sort of grew out of that into national sources and whatnot. But yeah, he started out, he was one of these guys who covered USF, and it was the weirdest thing when you would cover games at USF, like him and do you know who Greg Allman is? Not Greg Allman. Greg Allman. He covers NFC South for The Athletic or something like that. Well, he used to cover it too. Yeah, he used to be, and they would all sit over in this separate section from where the visiting media sat. It was around the corner in a different area. It was like they always thought they were too good for everybody else, that they had to be separated. The mighty USF.
Yeah, the beat writers of
yes.
South Florida Bulls.
There were more of them than there were fans. I mean, you talk about an NFL stadium that doesn't fill up or should not be used for college football. That's one. Yeah. I used to think Heinz Field at the time was oh, this is such a bad venue for college football. It's empty. And then I would go down there and I'd be like, holy crap, there's 40 people here. I mean, nobody showed up. And I think they're building a new stadium, a USF stadium.
Did you walk on the pirate ship when you were down there?
I didn't know you could walk on the pirate ship. They always shot off rockets and stuff, or cannons, I guess, not rockets.
Yeah, I don't really know.
You could walk on it.
Yeah, I would have explored.
Yeah. The only good thing about that trip is that it always seemed to be in late November. So you would get on the plane to fly down there and you'd be all bundled up because it was freezing cold up here. And you get off the plane and be I can remember multiple times driving in a rental car away from the airport and just being why do I live in Pittsburgh? It's November 30th and I have the windows down, the air conditioning's on. Why am I living in Pittsburgh when but I don't know if I would want to live in Tampa. It's not that great. Anyway, all right, over-unders, that was something I saw this week. Transfers and commitments. Pitt football, adding players. Chief Borders, Jim. Chief Borders. Defensive end coming in from Nebraska. He played as a stand-up pass rusher there. Did a lot of things at Nebraska. Did a number of things at Florida. Did a bunch of things in high school. But has never really put his hand on the ground as a defensive end. He's coming in to fill in that depth at defensive end. We know Pitt has a need there. He's an intriguing guy, 6'4", 245, good athlete. What's your take on Chief Borders as a transfer addition, 2 years left to play, coming to Pitt?
I think given the timeline of when he committed, I think that's about what you could hope for, and maybe then some. I mean, you're limited space. The transfer portal thing has passed. you don't know what you're going to add, but then you find this guy who was once like a borderline 4-star recruit that had like 30 Power 5 offers, that's 6'4", 250, that's capable of rushing the passer, that was the most improved player for Nebraska in the spring. And I don't know, like what, 8, it's like whenever you interviewed him, there was like 7 or 8 schools kind of interested in him, and they were all Power 4 schools. So yeah, that seems pretty good to me. I mean, I don't know what he's going to be. I don't know how he's going to, impact the team this year, but I think he's worth the risk. I think there's upside there. I think there's some untapped potential. And, it kind of goes back to me because he's a 2021 recruit. And it seems like there are a lot of 2021 recruits because that was the year, their senior year was during COVID. And there were some misevaluations. And I think we've seen that even within Pitt's own roster. Pitt has some 2021 recruits that have yet to play. Elliott Donald, Mekhi Johnson. So, I mean, I don't know if there was missed evaluations. They kind of missed their senior year, whatever it happened. But I think in Pitt's position, betting on the upside makes sense, and they need defensive ends. So I think they had a lot to sell him, and I think he had a lot to sell Pitt.
I'm intrigued. There was an extended segment when I interviewed Jeff Capel like a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how they've approached the transfer portal. And we talked, we were talking about Cam Corrin, right? And he was talking about Cam Corrin and all these things that Cam Corrin had done at Florida State that Florida State didn't seem to really be maximizing. And Pitt looked at it and they were like, we think if we do more of, if we have you do more of these things, your production can go up. And they kind of did it with Greg Elliott, said, if we get you a higher shot volume, your production can go up. Did it with Ishmael Leggett. Said if we feel like we put you in a different kind of situation where you don't have the pressure to take all the shots, your efficiency can improve. They've sort of, I hate to use like buzz terms, like market inefficiencies or money ball or things like that. But Capel and his staff have been able to find guys that maybe what they're actually good at is sort of it's overlooked by their current team. They're able to get those guys out of the portal and bring in and sort of maximize those abilities. Mogi is probably another one to look at. This kind of feels like that. It's a guy, he hasn't been a defensive end. And at 245 pounds, he's not exactly very heavy. You know what I mean? Like maybe he adds some weight, maybe he gets up to 255 or something for the season. But I can't imagine he's going to get that much higher in the next 4 months or 3 months. But it feels like they're looking at a guy and they're saying, okay, we're projecting that we can put him at defensive end and he can be fast off the edge and get around the tackles. There were a handful of times where Nebraska used him inside the tackles. I don't think Pitt's going to try and do that. They had him obviously standing up, playing linebacker over the slot or in the box. I don't think Pitt's going to go for that. They're going to put him hand on the ground, 4-3 edge rusher. They're projecting that he's going to be able to do it. Now, there's a bit of risk inherent in that, right? You don't know if a guy's actually going to take to that position. It's more physical to rush from the down lineman spot than it would be as an edge rusher. But this is probably the kind of space that Pitt, football and basketball, needs to inhabit for a lot of its transfers. They need to find guys that maybe get overlooked. And, like you said, according to Chief and his business manager, they had all these different schools coming after him, although he focused on Pitt and UCLA. But I think they need, they probably have to find guys that, you're projecting a little bit that maybe aren't doing the things that they're currently doing, or they're not currently doing their best things, but you project what they could do if they do more of those things. Does that make sense? Like, I think that might be the space that Pitt has to inhabit to really have success in the transfer portal.
Yeah, and I think they've already done that. And we talk about, Florida Gators coming to Pitt. I mean, Donovan McMillan. I mean, I think he was kind of miscast a little bit. He was kind of a special teams guy. He found a better situation at Pitt, and he was the leading tackler last year and is probably going to be one of the best players this year. So, I mean, I think that's what the transfer portal is all about. And when I look at this recruitment in particular, I mean, everything so much comes down to NIL anymore. And, that's why player A picks school B, and like, that's how it goes. But for Borders' perspective, like, this one made a lot of sense football wise. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of refreshing to see that football reasons still matter in some decisions. Like, okay, I'm good at rushing the passer. I'm big enough to be a defensive end. Let me find a school that is good at doing both of those things. And Pitt can provide that. And Pitt has playing time available. So, I mean, I think it was kind of a match made in heaven. So, I mean, yeah, obviously he's getting NIL money. Everyone gets NIL money. But like it wasn't the deciding factor. Like he looked at the situation. Okay, I kind of know the coaches. I have some former teammates on the team, and they're going to maximize my abilities. Yeah, that's how recruiting always used to work, and it makes sense here. So I don't know. I mean, it's just you always have to beat around the bush with NIL, but like this one makes sense, and I think there's a lot of upside, and I don't know if it's going to completely pan out for Pitt. I mean, he joins a group of defensive ends that's very unproven, and we don't know what to make out of. But whenever you look at those 8 or 9 guys, I mean, he is probably as talented as any of them, if not more.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Donovan McMillan, Dejon Reynolds as well. Also, guys in that 2021 recruiting class. Chief Borders, Derek Davis is in that 21 recruiting class. So are Nate Yarnell and Rodney Hammond. They obviously stuck around. Like you mentioned, Elliot Donald and Nikai Johnson. It's but so many guys out of Pitt's 2021 recruiting class have transferred. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like you said, that, just complete lack of recruiting contact and recruiting visits. I mean, it wasn't a factor in recruitment at all. And I think that, you end up with guys who haven't really visited a school or coaches who haven't really spent time around those guys. And it's interesting to look back at that 2021 recruiting class and see how much, and those are also guys who got into their second or third years of college right as the transfer portal was becoming a big deal with NIL. So it is an interesting class. A lot of those guys finding second homes. Of course, for Borders, this is his third home in college. And actually, if you go back, he's actually from Chicago, moved to Georgia, went to a high school there for a couple of years, moved to another high school in Georgia, was ruled ineligible. So he moved to a third high school in Georgia where he was somehow able to play, even though he'd been ruled ineligible so he played his final year at like a very small division of Georgia football, but it had his business manager told me he had 178 tackles in his senior year of high school in 10 games, which that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Said there was one game where he had 20 plus tackles, which I watched the highlights, and he's involved in a lot of those 20 plus tackles for sure. It's a lot. And, but I don't know. I think you have to take I think you kind of made this point too, as an end of, or a late spring portal edition, it's worth a shot.
It's a lot.
I think, yeah, it is. And it fills out your depth a little bit. Even if he doesn't become a starter, he's, in your rotation. So you have Nate Matlack, you have Van Brima, you have Jimmy Scott, you have Sincere Edwards, and you have this guy, and David Ojebwe. And you should be able to get a 2 deep out of that. I still don't feel great about the 2 deep there. I think there's still a lot of question marks, and maybe it'll be better by the end of the year, but I still think, but I don't think there's anything you can really do about it at this point, right? It just kind of is what it is.
No, I mean, I think there's a chance it's a really low floor. I mean, it might not be that good, but this raises the upside at least. I mean, there's a chance Chief Borders really takes to this defense, and the guy with an offer from every school in the country kind of puts it all together in his 4th season, 3rd school. I mean, yeah, it sounds like a lot. It's a mouthful, but it might work out. I mean, I think at the very least, they went in with a lot of questions at defensive end. They still have them, but yeah, they have one more guy that might make it a little bit better.
But what did you just say? Did you say it might work out? Is that what you just said? Because it's just funny. I feel like there's a lot of spots where I can look at it and be like, well, it might work out. Whether it's the offense or it's, I don't know. We're getting back into the question marks, of and then we're going to start questioning the over under 5.5 again, because it might work out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they got that on Sunday. Chief Borders committed, and then on Monday, 2 high school kids committing. Shep Turk, the lineman, offensive lineman, probably interior guy from Thomas Jefferson, and then Tony Kinsler, sort of a do-everything offensive weapon from Florida, both committing on Monday. Intriguing guys. Let's start with Kinsler. He mostly was a receiver at his school, took a few handoffs, a decent amount, actually. He carried ball 20 sometimes or something like that. Yeah. And then he was his team's leading receiver. I think he was the leader in all-purpose yards and all these guys. I mean, he's a playmaker. I thought his film kind of reminded me a little bit of Quadri Henderson, maybe not quite as fast as Quadri, but also maybe a little bit taller than Quadri. But you go back and watch Quadri's high school film, and you see similar kind of plays, like make a guy miss and then run away from people. And that's what Tony Kinsler seems to do a lot of. I guess my one question is he sort of seems a lot like Bryce Yates, like similar size, similar, speed, similar type of player. And they both seem kind of like Raphael Williams and Sincere Lee. And it, like, sort of feels like there's a pattern here, a trend. And I'm all for, you need playmakers. And I understand if Cade Bell likes guys who are a little bit smaller, but are able to break away and make big plays. But you do need some size at some points. Do you feel like it's a little redundant, or do you feel like this is just, it's a good playmaker to add? What do you think of Tony Kinsler?
I think it's a good playmaker to add. Watching the film, he does make a lot. He can line up everywhere. And I think on Rivals, we call him an all-purpose back, which is just code for, we don't really know what he is, but he's going to be a receiver at Pitt. And he does fit like Yates. And I think, looking at the official visit list for next month, there's a couple more guys just like them that are visiting, and they're still probably interested in. So I think that's kind of, that's kind of the shift right now. They are looking for some smaller receivers. They're trying to get faster. And again, it might work. I think that applies to everything about Pitt football in this offseason. We'll see how this offense looks, but they're looking for smaller, quicker playmakers, and that even carries over to running back. They're not recruiting a lot of 6'2", 210-pound running backs. There are a lot more Rodney Hammonds out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just remains to be seen how it plays out. But I think Kinsler's a good ad. I think, always keeping those connections in Florida going. We weren't sure how everything would look once Charlie Partridge left, because he was such a big part of, recruiting Florida for Pitt. But I still think, Lindsay Lamar adds to that. Corey Sanders has always recruited Florida too. So, I think they're keeping those pipelines open. So I think it's a good addition. He had a West Virginia offer, I think Indiana and Vanderbilt, a lot of group of 5 schools. So he looks like a lot of receivers they've been offering and targeting, and, they were going to land a couple of them.
Where is Port Orange, Florida? I don't know that on the map. Do you know where that is? Looking at the map.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like what area, like coach wise.
It's north of Orlando. It's on the Atlantic coast. It's near Daytona, actually. So I don't even know who that would be. In the past, that probably would have been Tim Salem.
That might be Sanders now. I'm not sure though.
I don't know. I don't know if Sanders picked up that side. He always had sort of like Tampa.
You would think
and that Gulf Coast. Yeah, that would make the most sense. We'll have to check on that and see what we give. I don't know who's taking over Miami. That's obviously a big area of priority. South Florida, which incidentally is not where the University of South Florida is. But I never really understood why the University of South Florida is called University of South Florida when it's more north than west. Central Florida. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Like that could be. Oh no, Central Florida is in Orlando. UCF is further north than, like, just looking at a map as the crow flies, as they say. Orlando is north of Tampa, but it's definitely.
But not by much.
Are you looking at a map right now? It's a considerable amount, I would say. Significant enough that one would not confuse Tampa for being north of Orlando. But either way, we often refer to South Florida as like the Miami area, but University of South Florida is, it's further south than Gainesville and Jacksonville and Tallahassee, and it's further south than Orlando, as we've already established, but it's not all that far south. Real quick comment here. Ethan Andre says, who would have thought we would be missing Kenny Pickett this bad? Maybe. I thought that. Yeah. I think anybody who watched him play last year. Yeah. Everybody watched him play last year was like, boy, that's going to be too bad when you don't have a Heisman Trophy finalist first-round draft pick at quarterback anymore. We all thought Keaton Slovis would be better. We all thought Frank Signetti would be better. We all thought Phil Dracovic would be better. We all thought Christian Bayer would be better. That's 4 misses right there. And I hesitate to call Slovis a complete miss. I still don't know what he might have become if he doesn't get hurt in that Tennessee game. I don't know what he might have become if Mark Whipple was back. I don't know what he might have become just with a different offensive coordinator altogether, just somebody who wasn't Frank Signetti. So I don't want to say Slovis was a giant miss, but he obviously didn't pan out. But yeah, I felt pretty confident that they would be missing Kenny Pickett.
The
So
Skull's
not
all-time
much of a
leading
question there.
passer. Yeah.
Yes. Shep Turk committing from Thomas Jefferson. I don't know if you watched his highlight film. I mean, like right from the start, he's just like killing people.
Yeah.
Like he's got that mean streak of a Thomas Jefferson player, Thomas Jefferson offensive lineman, just going out. Like there's a play in the red zone, and he's like driving a linebacker out of the back of the end zone. Just doesn't stop. There's one play where he just drops a defensive lineman and starts running around just looking for someone to hit. And fortunately for him, unfortunately for a linebacker, he ends up finding that guy and just pummels him. He's just, it's who you would hope to get out of Western Pennsylvania. It's sort of a classic Western Pennsylvania lineman. And, it's nice to see them get some. I keep like saying like, oh, it's good they finally got somebody from Thomas Jefferson again, even though they just had a guy from Thomas Jefferson graduate. But that dude committed in like 2017. It's been 7 years since a Thomas Jefferson player committed to Pitt. And so, yes, Devin Danielson just left the roster, but he was here a really, really long time. So it feels like it's been a long time since they recruited somebody from TJ, but he fits the bill, right? Of a classic TJ guy, a Whippeal guy, and I think a good add to the offensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed him the other night, and I kind of knew what I was getting into when I interviewed him. And I asked the typical questions. I said, "Why Pitt?" And I think one of the things was I wanted to go somewhere that plays smash mouth football, somewhere where you get to punch someone and not let them punch back. I feel Pitt fits that mold. So like that is. Yeah, I don't know what Cade Bell's offense is going to be, but I think Jeremy Darveau is preaching physicality to the offensive lineman he's recruiting, and I think Shep Turk is exactly what you would want from a Pittsburgh player. I mean, I don't think his commitment's going to silence any critics of Pitt missing out on a lot of big time Whippeal talent and in-state talent, but you still need to add guys like that. You still need to fill out your roster with Pennsylvania guys. You can't ignore it, and even sometimes the guys you take a flyer on from Pittsburgh, sometimes they work out. Cruz Brookins, they added him late because someone decommitted. Now he's looking like one of the best players in his class. I mean, Braylon Lovelace was someone that nobody else was recruiting. He played for a single A school that never produces Division I players. He already looks pretty good. So I don't know. I mean, you can't ignore the Whippeal entirely. You still would like to do better with the high end players, but you're still going to find good players in your backyard. And I think Shep Turk kind of is one of those type of players.
Yep. I agree. I liked the offer when it went out, and like the commitment now that they got it. Joey Delich wants to know, what do you think of Elijah Dotson from Michigan, a safety who's a 3-star or 4-star on some sites? Dotson, what is he? He's a 4-star in Rivals, right?
3-star.
Is he a 3-star in Rivals? Okay. He announced he is committing on Saturday. He's committing on Saturday. I think he's got a top 4 of Pitt, Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State, I think it is. He visited this spring. Am I correct about that? Am I wrong?
No, I talked to him back in March. He's visited.
That's right.
Both 2 springs in a row, last spring and this spring.
Okay. That's what I thought. So committing on Saturday, I think Pitt's in good shape. I mean, Joey goes on to say seems pretty good. Looks like we will land him. Yeah, I think Pitt's got a pretty good shot there. I mean, obviously it's some stiff competition, but a lot to like in the defensive backfield, a lot to like with Pitt's history of safeties and corners. I think they've got a pretty good shot. We'll be keeping an eye. I think it's happening at 3:00 in Michigan.
3:00.
Is that Central time zone?
No, it's still Eastern.
Oh, good. Way to go, Michigan. Way to get on board. So I don't know. What do you think of him as a player? If they are able to land him, what do you think?
Well, he's out of Belleville High School, which is typically a high school that's producing a lot of talent in the state of Michigan. He has a bunch of offers. I went back and looked. I mean, he had 68 tackles, 3 interceptions on defense, and we're talking about wide receivers. He's 6'2", 175 pounds. He had 16 touchdowns and 1,600 all-purpose yards on offense. He could probably play. I mean, Rivals list him as a wide receiver. I think schools are recruiting him as a wide receiver, but I think he's going to, if Pitt's recruiting him as a defensive back, I like Pitt's chances. And I think it goes back a lot to his connection with Archie Collins. We thought Pitt when this staff was assembled, we thought Pitt would recruit Michigan a little bit better just because of Narduzzi's connections, Sanders and Collins. And they haven't always landed players from Michigan, but they've gotten in the door with some good ones. And I think this is a good one, and I think Pitt has a good chance here.
Yeah, that'd be a nice little add. What do you think of this class they're putting together so far? I mean, they've got 5 commitments after landing those 2 guys. There's the 2 receivers we talked about, Yates and Kinsler. There's the offensive lineman, Shep Turk, the quarterback, Mason Heinschel, and then the defensive end, Trevor Summers from Florida. All 3 stars right now, right? I don't think anybody's.
We're working on getting Kinsler some stars.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Did Shep Turk ever get his stars?
He did.
Oh, good for him. 3? See,
yeah.
3-star prospect. I didn't even see that update got made, but so all right around that range that Pitt typically recruits. What we just got a couple of minutes left here, Jim. What do you think of the class so far?
I mean, so far so good. I mean, I think Heichel's a better prospect than maybe some people realize. I think he performed well in an Elite 11 camp, and I don't know if it's going to be like a Kenny Minchie situation where other schools start flooding his with offers, but I think he's a good prospect. I think he fits what they're trying to do. I mean, the receivers are both in that mold of like quicker guys that are going to play in this up-tempo spread. And so, I mean, you would like to see more high-end talent. You'd like to see more 4 stars, and I'm sure that's what fans are going to talk about. Between now and July, whenever recruiting really picks up these next couple weeks. So we'll see what they can add. I mean, I think our list right now, there's 30 guys taking over 30 uncommitted guys taking official visits next month. I'm sure that list will change a little bit, but I don't know. It'll be easier to answer that question about like at the halfway point of June. After that, like that June 6th to 8th,
yeah,
to see what happens there. Then you can kind of start assessing what the class really looks like.
Well, we came out of June last year talking about Narduzzi might sign more 4 stars than he ever had before. I think he fell short of that mark, but they had I want to say 14 4-star recruits visit last June.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
12. It was 12, and they landed.
Whittington.
No, that's not right.
Lindsay.
No, I was looking at something else. That was a different number. I mean, they had a lot. I think it was 12. It might have been 14. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
It was 14. What it ended up being.
Oh, okay. And they got 3 of them or 4 of them.
Edwards, Whittington, Lindsay, Brew.
Oh, okay.
Brew wasn't a 4-star at the time.
That's right. So right now, of the confirmed official visitors for June, I mean, there's only 3 4-star prospects in there. There'll be a couple more that pop up, but it doesn't seem like there's as much. I mean, there's a few like high 3 stars who could make a jump, but it doesn't seem like there's as much in terms of the potential for a star-studded June. But this is just kind of where Pitt, this is where they live, right? I mean, they make their living with 3-star guys. That's kind of who they tend to recruit, and that's who they're bringing in June. I just happened to notice, Jim, it got dark. I wasn't looking over your shoulder, but the sun has set throughout the course of this show. So
yeah, I mean, someone could have watched that and just felt like they were in Johnstown with me.
That was cool. Brock says, did Borders visit Pitt last weekend? Also, what's the feeling on Dotson committing on Saturday with a bunch of predictions having him go to Pitt? Yeah, like we said, we think Pitt's got a pretty good shot there with Dotson. Borders visited last Wednesday, is what he told me. And he spent most of his time with Donovan McMillan, who he said is his best friend, Dejon Reynolds, who he's really good friends with, Tamon Lynham, who he knew from Nebraska. He was with Reynolds and McMillan at Florida. He was with Lynham at Nebraska. Rashad Battle, who he knew from growing up in Georgia. And then Bree Kelly, Pitt volleyball player who transferred from Florida. So he kind of I think Tim Doust was on the road. Narduzzi was probably around. But I think he mostly just spent time with those other student athletes, and that was his they showed him around Pitt. They that was his recruiting visit. So that's when he was here. It was last Wednesday actually. So we'll see. We'll see what comes. I don't know. Last thing, what do you think? Do you think they'll get anybody else for football, like transfer wise? Do you feel like that's probably? I mean, still need 1 or 2 to go, right, to fit everybody in?
Yeah, I think they're like at 86, 87 right now. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess they can make things work with a walk on or two and get to 85, but I don't know if they're going to add anyone else. I don't know I mean, like they could keep adding defensive linemen and I still would kind of feel uncomfortable with it. I
Yeah.
think they just need to add like 10 more and maybe I'll
Yes.
feel better, but I don't know other positions that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right. Well, I think that about does it here as we pass the 9 o'clock hour. It's dark in Johnstown, so it seems like a good time to hang up. Appreciate everybody who tuned in tonight. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Everybody in the chat, we appreciate you guys. Good comments and questions. It's always fun having these conversations. Jim, thanks to you for hanging out tonight. We appreciate that as well. Everybody check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all your Pitt sports news. So like and subscribe and check out the website. And check out the Morning Pit tomorrow, where we will be discussing whether the changes in college sports are good for Pitt. That's a big topic. We could have spent like an hour. We were going to talk about that tonight, Jim. And then Pitt had a Bosnian on campus who shoots 41.5% from three. So that kind of that took that segment out of the show. It was like, we'll talk about college sports later. Let's talk about Delich. I'm kind of defaulting to that. It's not comfortable to say Delich, but I'm kind of defaulting to that. Delich or Delich.
Yeah, any of the highlights I found of him, it's just like there's music in the background, and obviously like the commentating wouldn't be in English. So like I don't know if we're gonna find that correct pronunciation for a while. We're gonna be on the hunt.
They're not singing about him, are they? Like singing his name?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm sure European basketball crowds are a little bit different than the Oakland Zoo.
Yeah. All right. I'll have to we'll keep working on that. This is the biggest thing now. We found his stats. Now we need to find out how to pronounce his name. But all right, Jim, thanks so much. It's been fun hanging out. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. We will catch up with you for the Morning Pit tomorrow. Another live stream next Wednesday night. Have a good rest of the week.